Hi, I'm Celeste Goyer, board member at Smart Share Housing Solutions. Thanks for joining us as we talk about accessory dwelling units. Today, we're starting with a basic overview of what they are and how they might work for you. We're joined by Ann Wyatt, Executive Director of Smart Share and ADU SLO. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Celeste. Glad to be here with you.
Glad to have you. Let's get started.
Okay, so we are going to talk about ADUs and how they can be helpful to people and what types are available that can be constructed and the costs and the process for getting ADUs. This is meant just to be a most basic primary informational video, and we have other more detailed videos that we'll be offering to people as well on more specific topics. So in general, ADUs, accessory dwelling units, can take a lot of forms, and they can look a lot of different ways. So we'll look at some diagrams of how those can be. And the nutshell is that these ADUs are second units on a parcel with a primary unit. So a question we get a lot is, can I put an ADU on a lot with no house? And upfront, straight, no gray area answer is no. Your accessory dwelling unit ADU is accessory to a primary house. So on this slide, we can see a lot of different forms that they can take. We can have the detached ADU that's totally separate from the primary house. Our ADU can be attached to the house, a new construction that's attached, sharing a wall. It can be interior to the house, within a garage or within a basement or attic or some portion of the house that isn't being used and a separate entry can be added, such as a master suite. It can be new construction above a garage, or like I said, some kind of garage conversion. So the accessory unit can come in a whole lot of different forms, depending on what spaces are available and what's of interest. Why would you build an ADU? Celeste, do you want to talk about these reasons?
Sure. There are a lot of reasons why adding a separate living space on your lot can be helpful to you. The first one most people think about is rental income. And the rental income that you would get from accessory dwelling unit would be for long-term rentals, because the rules in most cases don't allow you to do a short-term or vacation style rental in a new accessory dwelling unit. So another great reason to have an ADU is family flexibility. These units can serve different purposes throughout their lifespan. So while you might begin by having family members stay there, or just guests, or use it for your work, down the road, you might want to have a caregiver stay there to help you age in place. Eventually, you might have an adult child move in to help you with your needs. And then you might even move into it yourself. Let's say you have a two-story home and the stairs are getting to be too much for you. Well, move into your single level ADU and rent out the big house, or have family move in. So there are a lot of options that you can use these flexible spaces for.
Right, and beyond these specific benefits to the homeowner or reasons homeowners may want to build, the benefits are huge to communities in terms of adding diversity and rental housing stock to neighborhoods that don't have a lot of rental housing. For those of us that are interested in sustainability, it makes use of the infrastructure already available, the utilities and roads and driveways that are already available on residential lots, and provides a way for caregiving or lesser family care costs for multi-generational families. So a lot of benefits to the community at large to constructing these beyond just the individual benefits to homeowners.
And that is a motivation for some ADU builders to be part of the housing solution.
Right, right. So we're trying to build on that sort of self-interest and community-minded interest here and have opportunities both ways. So we've got some graphics here of different types of detached ADUs, and these can be built new, or they can be converted from existing structures. We're expecting that a lot of older homeowners may not need garage spaces, may not have a lot of bikes and motorcycles they're using. So there may be a high level of opportunity to convert existing garages, which would come in at some of the lower price points. And so another category of ADU allowed and created in the state of California is the junior ADU, the JADU. And it's an ADU that's converted from existing space. So rather than new construction added on, the junior ADU would be existing attached garage or space within the house, whether that's a basement, master bedroom, or attic. And so in California, virtually all residential lots are allowed to have one JADU and one ADU on residential lots, allowing for 3 different units on lots. And we just see in the last days, Governor Newsom has signed SB 9, which allows for some lot divisions and duplexes on lots, which is going to add some interesting new opportunities added on to the ADU and JADU allowances already in place. So it'll be interesting to see how the new SB 9 details sort themselves out.
And another option as well they've allowed is to have your junior accessory dwelling unit attached to your ADU. So you could build a new structure, which was a detached new ADU with a junior suite as part of it as well.
So that's interesting.
Yep.
So adding on, so that's been clarified that the JADU can be added to the ADU.
Yep. So if let's say you live in a small older home that doesn't have an extra bedroom suite that you want to convert to a JADU, but you'd love to have the income from 2 separate units, that's a new option.
So a variety of options available. And nutshell, both ADUs and JADUs, like houses, are units that have their own cooking facilities. That can be just a basic all-electric kitchenette and their own bathing facilities and separate entries. And so those are the minimal requirements. They can be, in general, as small as 150 square feet, but are all kind of separately contained. So what can you build on your lot? How long does it take? And the cost. Let's talk about those questions a little bit here. I think we already covered sort of what can be built in theory, these 3 separate units, along with the primary, an ADU and a JADU. Those are subject to some requirements, 3 feet setbacks on the back and the side, and depending on the area, what the front setbacks are. But that's kind of a rough guideline for figuring out if you have space for new construction. And then other things you want to add on the what can I build, Celeste? Any quick tips or information that you think should be added there?
Well, just that it's not always easy to determine that by yourself. So most people will talk with a contractor or an architect to determine that. But SmartShare also has a program where we can come out and help you with feasibility on your site to understand what can be done there through ADU Slow, our program.
Thanks for that. Yes, it's a confusing sort of process understanding the planning and building codes. And so we're here to help at SmartShare and ADU Slow. So the process roughly looks like this, starting on the left, kind of figuring out what the codes allow and what's possible. And mixed with that, what's possible depends on what funding is available for a project. Your restrictions may be based on square footage in your site, but they also may be based on how much of a loan you can get or cash you have in your pocket for funding. After people have sort of sorted those parameters out, there's a design process, sort of figuring out just exactly what footprint the unit would be, what kind of layout meets a person's needs, whether that's a smallest, most affordable studio unit or a larger unit to house a larger number of family members, and how that'll efficiently function. The design's really important to have all the essentials, but also to provide privacy from the main house and make sure that function of outdoor space and privacy is maintained. Once you have a design, then that can be submitted with an application to get the unit permitted. And then once you've got the permit in hand, that's kind of the get to go point for construction bids and constructing the unit.
Sorry.
And So it can take a lot of forms then. We've got some small studios pictured, and then the construction process and renting it. And that process, the best case scenario could be 6 or 9 months for this process, but what we're seeing more realistically is it tends to be a year and a half or 2 year process for all of this. And it's important to note in this process that there are a couple of components. So in order to kind of get to the construction phase, to do this what's possible, fund, design, and permit, you need a certain amount of money set aside for that process. And what we're seeing is sort of best case scenario for the planning permits and exploratory design process would be around $6,000. And more likely, we're seeing a cost of $12,000 or so to get the permit in hand to do the construction. So it's an important component to get the help one needs and have some amount of funding available just to get to the point where construction is possible.
Because sometimes there are some studies or work up front before you can even determine the parameters of your design that are possible on your lot, correct?
That's correct. A couple of major considerations are figuring out where the sewer lines are, just where they are and how close to the potential ADU project, whether you have adequate drop. So that can take, if it's not obvious somehow, that can take cameraing the sewer line and figuring that out. So that can be a fair expense. Otherwise, engineering can be expensive. We had one client who was thinking of building an ADU in her unfinished basement area, and she had a lot of structural support beams there existing. And so I estimated that just the engineering to figure out how to reconfigure all of those supports may have cost her $40,000 just to kind of engineer some re-supports. So we found another way she could meet her objectives without working there, because just to do that, spend that money on the exploratory process didn't make any sense for her needs. So that's an important component with some engineering, some waistline calculation, and with existing electrical calculations. Sometimes older houses aren't going to have the amperage required for the ADU hookups. So they might need new boxes, new lines from the streets, and some of that which could cost a lot. So it's good to know what's available and what would be needed in advance.
So looking further through the process, the icon on the right, this is for people who are going to be renting their unit. Now, is there help available? Because I know that a lot of people thinking about doing this, they've never been a landlord. They're uncertain about how to select a tenant and how to write up an agreement. Is there help that could get them through that part of the process?
Yes, many nonprofits through the state of California offer assistance in rental guidelines and process, as does SmartShare's ADU Slow program. So we're here to help with that process, knowing that's not something a lot of people have done before, have a lot of experience in, and that will be an important component of finding and screening the right tenants, having people that are comfortable to share the spaces with, designating what's private space and what's shared space in the yards and common areas.
Absolutely. So it's a little more complicated than just renting an apartment to someone. You will be interacting and sharing space. So it's important you define those parameters.
Very important. And so that can take some upfront work. And just like home sharing, in some of SmartShare's other programs, it's important to kind of lay out a lot of parameters in advance and be clear on what works for both parties.
Great. Okay, so we've corralled some pictures here and some options that might be on the more affordable end of ADU construction, because like any home construction, there is a range of cost depending on your goals and your budget. So at the bottom of the affordability, at the cost chart, we've got those interior suites we were talking about, or JADUs. And here are a couple examples of a kitchenette and what had been a large living room converted into a studio.
Right. And it's fun to see these images of some projects we worked on directly and how they came together. And so these interior suites, obviously, where you don't have to build your new structure, you already have that there and can utilize that existing resource, is likely to be a less expensive option. It's not always the case because sometimes your structure may be dated and the amount of engineering or reworking can actually be more expensive than new construction, but that would be rare. So that's why these interior spaces are ones that we're going for. A lot of American seniors, HUD estimates approximately 20% of American seniors are overhoused. They have extra bedrooms or extra spaces in their houses that aren't getting lived in that could be converted to JADUs or ADUs, as can garages. So these detached garages, this one shown is a particularly good example of a nice private space that can become a very functional studio for a single person. It's also important to note that our changing demographics in California and the nation dictate the need for new housing types, such as ADUs. We're seeing a lot more single person households and especially senior single households, and in particular, then single senior women households. And increasingly, they'll be trying to make it on a very limited Social Security income, which now averages around $12.50 a month, which is less than the price of an average studio or one bedroom unit here in San Luis Obispo right now.
Absolutely. And there are, in fact, many neighborhoods where the only affordable housing option in them would be accessory dwelling units, because otherwise it's all large homes.
That's
So,
right.
yeah. So for
That's
those of
right.
you who are worried about your storage that you might lose if you convert your garage, there are plenty of nice sheds out there that you can put in your backyard that don't require a permit to install and will store a lot of your boxes and things.
That's right. There are options. Some stuff has to go somewhere. Yeah, we're also looking at and interested in factory built ADUs. This is some of the modular manufactured tiny housing available. And so manufactured housing is allowable as ADUs in California. They do have to be on fixed foundations in most jurisdictions. And so we get a lot of questions and interest in tiny houses on wheels, as one is pictured here, and they're not allowed in most jurisdictions in California right now. There are a couple exceptions. The city of San Luis Obispo, Fresno, LA, and a few other cities allow tiny homes on wheels, but they don't count as real property. So people are struggling a little bit to get loans and assess the added long-term value, appreciation or depreciation they might get from tiny houses on wheels. So even in the jurisdictions, the few of them that they're allowed, we're not seeing a lot of traction for tiny houses on wheels. And the graphic that we have shown here, if we switch back to the last slide, it shows us actually side by sides of a tiny house on wheels and then an ADU on a fixed foundation that was actually adapted by a San Luis Obispo resident to, it started as a tiny house on wheel plan set that was then plunked on a fixed foundation. So for those who want small and the general look on tiny house on wheels, it can be done, but then just switch off of the wheels onto a fixed foundation to meet general California building codes. So some more examples of how functional the garage conversions can be, the small open studios and one bedrooms. Again, for the increasing number of single person households who don't necessarily cook a lot, the simple kitchenette and space can go a long ways. So we appreciate you joining us for this general ADU informational video. We are here to help, smartsharehousing.solutions.org. And we have some contacts to learn more. Mine is Anne with an E at smartsharehousing.solutions.org. You can go to that website and our YouTube channel for more informational videos. Also, we recommend HCD's ADU handbook. It's kind of the statewide housing agency guidance for what's possible and sort of the final word on ADU rules. So it has a wealth of information. And we also recommend the information on the Casita Coalition's website. That's casitacoalition.org. And they have a lot of information, both for policymakers and for homeowners wanting to create ADUs.